It was that time of year again, and I decided to sign up for another Pirate Software game jam. The theme this time was You Are the Weapon. My team and I decided to make a platformer where the player plays as a mistreated wand who is trying to escape the castle. So I got to work and started blocking out the scene and how it might look. You can see here we have our little wand, and if you run into an enemy, you're reset back to the first of the level. So after we had a rudimentary character controller and collision detection setup, I decided to take a break from coding, and I hopped into Sprite and started to crack away at the tile set. Once I had the tile map created, I started blocking out a test scene to see how it would look. I also added some of the sprites that my teammate and I had created. The game was starting to take shape. The next thing I decided to work on was a controller that followed the player. I added a camera 2D node under the player node and gave it a test using the default settings. Out of the box, it wasn't too bad, but I did want to make a few tweaks so that the player wasn't able to pan outside the level. After a little tweaking of the settings, I got it in a decent spot. I would later fill in the map with some more tiles to hide the rest of the free space. Due to the time that was remaining on the game jam, my team and I decided to limit the game to a single level with 2 different areas. In order to save time on creating a new tile set, I decided to just modify the first tile set and change some colors to create a basement area with a new look. Now that I had a new tile map for the basement area, I began to add collision properties to the floor and ceiling through the tile map editor and some code. With those changes, the wand is now not able to go through the ceilings, floors, walls, etc. I blocked out the basement area and moved on to adding particle effects to the wand. I was hoping that this effect would give off the idea that the wand is magical and not just a regular object. At that point, I was ready to replace the temporary sprite with a more stylized one, so I opened up Sprite again and created a new sprite. After that, I took a break from the main sprite and animated some of the sprites that my teammate had created. Once those animations were complete, I decided to revisit the character controller. The character controller I had initially created was just a standard Node 2D with a custom script attached. I didn't really like how floaty and slow it felt, so I decided to base the character controller off of a character body 2D node instead. The character body 2D node comes with a default script that handles some of the movement and gravity interactions. It felt a lot better. The only problem now was since the character now reacts to gravity, the wand is tied to the ground. I had to come up with some way to make it float, but still react to gravity, so that the player couldn't just fly up to the ceiling and avoid the enemies. The first thing I tried to do is separate the sprite from the collision object so that the collision object would still react to gravity and keep the wand sprite floating, giving the illusion of levitating. One of the problems with this approach was that the collision object below was colliding with the enemy even though the wand was jumping above. The other problem is that the collision object was getting caught on ledges when the player was trying to jump on the platforms. If I turn on the visibility of the collision shapes, it is pretty easy to see why this is happening. The second thing I tried was to shrink down the collision shape to as small as I could get it. I also thought it might help by turning on one-way collision so that only collisions would happen on the bottom side. This unfortunately did not solve the problem. It still collided with objects below and made platforming impossible. For my third attempt, I decided to experiment with the shape property under the collision shape 2D node. The separation ray shape 2D shape sounded promising. I chose that and removed the setting for one-way collision. Would this third attempt fix my problems? Spoiler alert, yes, but with a few modifications. I made a separate collision object for the wand to trigger an enemy interaction, so that the bottom collision shape no longer triggered incorrect enemy collisions. I was still having some issues with the platforming section. I did the following to fix this. I shortened the distance between the sprite and the bottom collision shape. I rotated the sprite and the collision objects at an angle. I made the character controller flip around when the player went in opposite directions. After doing these 3 things, the character controller was in a good enough spot to move on to the other things. I animated the wand sprite's idle animation to help sell the illusion that it is levitating. I gave it an animation player and created a few keyframes in a short loop. I was happy with the final result. Now that we had our character in a good place, what was left for the game jam was fitting in as much features as we could to make the game more interesting with the time we had left. In order to not make this YouTube video too long, I'm going to speed through all the other things that we did before completion.
3, 2, 1, go!
Fixed collision bug that would let the wand levitate on the enemy's head and not get caught. Fixed another collision bug. Added more wizard students to the level. Added a box. Programmed interaction with that box. Fixed physics property of the box. Created a new animation for a wand flick. Gave the wand flick some color variation. Gave the wand the ability to go invisible to bypass wizard students. Did some last minute improvements such as decorate the box, give variations to the wizard students, and created a door and transition to the upper level. And one more secret, but you'll have to play the game to find out. Once all of those things were completed, we finally submitted our game with just a few hours remaining. As I did during the last game jam I participated in, I took some time to stream me playing some of the other submissions to the game jam. I'm always amazed at how talented the other teams are and impressed with everything they are able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. There were really some fun and creative games. So that's it. Another game jam completed and in the books. They are always stressful, but I am always amazed how much I can get done if I really prioritize my time and dedicate myself to game dev. It was fun to try my hand at a platformer, and I hope to revisit this genre in the future. There are definitely some things I would do better, but I am happy with our team's result. Thanks so much for watching. I will leave a link to the game in the description if you would like to try it out. I've got a lot planned for this year, and I'm excited to show you guys what I've been cooking up. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.